Jackie Locks asks, talk about being woke and being in an interracial relationship. What tensions do you face? Is it difficult? Do you have differing views on whiteness, systemic racism, being black in America, politics? Yeah. Collectively, are we woke or not? So I feel like first we should define ourselves racially, so that way that gives a greater context to the conversation that we're trying to have in this video. So I am a Black American, and I am descendant of slaves who came here to America by force. So my family line has been in America for a long time.
American of Mexican descent? So first generation American, I guess?
Yeah, you're like 1.5.
Yeah, version 1.5. And like an eighth Lebanese.
Yeah.
I guess so the way that I kind of grew around identity was there were white people, there were black people, and then there was like the brown people, right? So growing up in Laredo, all I really knew was brown people, but you see white people in the media. It's like, oh yeah, there's white people, and then oh yeah, there's like specks of black people around. Like, yeah, I mean that's the nation. That's like the world, I guess. But for the most part, it was just predominantly Hispanic. I don't even know when I saw like an actual white person. That was weird. I think that was high school.
Really?
And then the same for like a black person too. Yeah, because it wasn't until we traveled for UIL for like debate and stuff.
Oh wow.
And we went to Corpus. I was like, oh, there's white people. Whoa.
That's awesome. Okay.
And they were weird and different. We were the brownest people there, and it's like, yeah, that's cool, but whatever. So that was that, and then went to Indiana, like went to school or college in like northern Indiana, like borderline Michigan, super white, not really much of a culture shock except for the fact that there was a lack of culture. So it's just white people. And then it's like, oh yeah, I'm Hispanic. I'm definitely Hispanic now. Whereas in Laredo, I didn't really think that way. But you hold on to every shred of identity that you can. Then it's like, yeah, I'm super Texan and Hispanic. And then after that came back to South Texas, and again, it's mostly Hispanic. And then just meeting you, it didn't really, I'm not going to say that I didn't see race, but it's like with you, you're black. She's a black woman, but she's super cool to talk with, and we had talked about this in another video. It's just really easygoing, and there was no focus on the racial aspect of it. It's just, I love this person. I really connect with them. And so the fact that just everybody else kind of poked around like, well, she's black and just dig this up. It's like, well, yeah, I don't know what that means.
I think in their mind, they were thinking like, there's other women you could be talking to or dating or courting that like aren't black. Like, why are you going to make it more difficult for yourself when you don't have to?
I didn't know if it was that charged, and if it was, just makes me more upset.
I don't think people even realize that they're thinking that way, but they are.
Oh, it's just a subconscious schema that they're working with.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you think about like no one's really perfect, and like outside of race, like no one's really perfect. So if I have somebody who's willing to give themselves to you just like completely, and I'm willing to do the same thing, so why wouldn't you just, it's like whether they have 6 arms, and it's like, well, that's
a little weird.
That's going to be a little weird, because when you sleep, like turn to your side, it's going to be like,
yeah, it's a bit, yeah.
like a beetle. But it's not like an alien species.
Right. So I grew up here in San Antonio, which is a minority-majority city. So it's mostly the schisms that are here in San Antonio are more based around class than race. And I think a lot of that is also because we have a heavy military influence, and generally speaking, a lot of generalizations, but in the military, you get exposure to more cultures, and interracial relationships are more common. So I'm an Air Force brat, so it wasn't new to me to see people mixing across racial lines. That's something else too. Growing up, my parents always stressed the idea of finding someone that compliments you, someone that's going to respect you as a woman, someone that you can build a life with. They never really pushed race as part of that. So I think something that also helped was that since I grew up here in San Antonio, it's minority majority, but the majority that is the minority is people of Latino descent. So that was a culture that I was very aware of and understood a lot about, just because it's kind of like very adjacent to my own culture as a Black American, but then also I've just like geographically been submerged in it.
Yeah, I mean, they got over the fact that you were Black
Pretty quick.
I mean,
it didn't take long. Yeah.
the first time that I brought you down was Father's Day. It was my dad's birthday, Father's Day.
Yeah.
And then
we were already engaged, so they had to be on board by then
I forgot
too.
about that.
They didn't really
We moved quick.
Yeah, they didn't really have
and
time.
pushed a lot on them, but they met you the first time, and then they were like,
yeah, they were like, oh,
they
this is
they
fine.
bought in. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a stock we'll buy.
So yeah, I
It's
feel
good
like
stock.
the tension.
Good stock.
The tension was more if it was much tension, it was like very initial within dating, and it was mostly more from your side than mine.
Mostly, and it was also just the fact that we were moving the way we were moving in
Yeah,
our relationship.
we just moved.
Very independent and kind of,
Yeah.
not really seeking anybody's opinion out.
Right.
Which is
the way
par
you
for the
should
course.
do it.
Yeah.
Honestly, Is it so like the second part of the question is like, is it difficult to be in an interracial relationship? Is it difficult?
Day to day, no.
Yeah.
So day to day is not a big deal, but when there's another flashpoint, like socially, so like 2015, and
Yeah.
I'll let you get into that, but so that bothered you a lot, obviously on everybody's consciousness, but everyone's talking about the narrative differently.
Right.
And so, yeah, Black people getting shot, Black people dying at police hands, police brutality, the like military style response in Ferguson, the cops shot this Black man. That's not right. Why is everybody rioting though? I don't understand it, because it just seems like an inappropriate response. And then you had responded,
we're Americans, but we don't have the same bedrock that everyone else has. And so when that's your baseline of realizing that you're basically a foreigner in your own country and you have no trust or faith in your government, like it's literally two Americas that you live in, and you've been like comfortable with the version of America that applies to you, whereas with Black people there's a different version of America that applies to us, and trying to help you work through that understanding took time.
it took a long time.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, not forever, for
No.
years, but it took
About a
weeks.
year. Yeah.
Did it take a year?
I mean, well, I think Trayvon was like the pivot moment for us, in that, yeah, you really, I remember it was interesting because I remember you came at Trayvon Martin from just like, what are the laws of that state? And I was like, no, but you're not understanding the social aspect of it, and that's what matters here, And I remember for you, it took a while, and I think I finally like sat you down and was like, if we have, because I realized it was like, you have to get this though, because if we have children, this cult, like, even though they are half Latino, and I as their mother would try to instill in them as much of that identity and culture as I can, the country will see them as Black, and you need to be on board. Like, you need to understand what that means. So we need to talk about this a lot, And this was also when we were still trying to even figure out if we wanted children and stuff like that too. So that was like, I think that was what pushed me to have a lot of those conversations with you around Trayvon, because it was like, if you and I want to have children, then you need to understand what they're going to have to go through.
Right. And it's really interesting to see the way that your identity morphed out of everything that happened starting from 2015 on. So then in 2016, you really started kicking into your YouTube channel and trying to connect with people and really showing your voice and just kind of using that as a platform.
Yeah.
So it all kind of came out of that.
It did, definitely.
And you kind of thinking about who you were.
Right. Yeah.
And I came along for the ride.
Yeah, because again, I think here in San Antonio, with being a minority majority city and it not really being more around race lines, but more around class lines, I always knew I was Black and always identified as Black, but it wasn't the first thing I ever had to identify myself as, because I was in an environment where I just didn't have to. And so seeing, the rest of the country and being reminded of how separated and isolated a lot of the rest of the country is, it made, and then also going to college and going through a predominantly white institution in college it just really made me realize, like, oh no, yeah, I gotta like proclaim this. Even though I've always known it and I've never shied away from it, I need to like boldly proclaim this now, so people can understand what it means to not only be Black, but just to be an American, and like to broaden your idea of what an American is.
Discussing whiteness, like nothing. I mean, white people are white people, right? Like
Right.
they will either feel a certain way about you or they won't. I mean, I don't see them as a devil.
I don't either. I don't see them as the devil. I've been really blessed in my regard to have a lot of like very woke white people around me, so much so that I have very little patience or tolerance for white people that don't understand. Because if you watch I have 3 grandmas, that video, you see my grandma Jan, who again is another Air Force, she was an Air Force brat, or Air Force wife. And as y'all can see in that video, she's from Boston, she's feisty. Like if anyone comes at her with anything about me, a Black girl, being in her presence, she was so quick to be like, shut up, you know? And very much using her white power and white privilege to stand up for me. Like I never felt like I had to have the voice. She would always be like, it's not your job to have the voice, it's mine, because I'm the one with the power in this situation, you know? So with white people in general, I do not understand when they aren't down. Like I just don't get it. I would say the biggest like constant or immediate factor with I would say the biggest or the constant more immediate factor with us and our location here in San Antonio is colorism and the ideas of colorism within this area of Texas. Because within his culture there's colorism, within my culture there's colorism, so when our 2 forces combine, there's just that much more color, you know. It's on both fronts. So
what's weird is that I distinctly remember a family get-together where they talked about like the features of either the indigenous people or European. Like I remember that, but this was that transition where like I still couldn't speak Spanish, still can't speak Spanish, still couldn't speak it, but I understood it. Not a lot of people knew that I understood it, or didn't really care because I was a kid, but I could understand what was going on. And so they were having that talk about whose features had what, and what meant what, and what was good and what was bad. So you could tell what was good or bad because of just the way that they were saying it.
Yeah. Even though they weren't maybe explicitly saying dark skin is bad, the way they were talking about that feature, it let you know of like, I should not want to be dark, apparently.
But after hearing it and thinking, oh yeah, I have the good features. Okay. And
then too, like I already see it with my nephew a lot because he's so fair, and it'll be interesting, like you said, it'll be interesting to see how he grapples with and approaches identity as well, because he's my sister's son, but his dad is Mexican, but more, even though he's Mexican, he too has very strong Spanish features. He's very fair, he's very tall, he's a handsome guy, you know, like he's got a lot of those. Everyone thinks they're related. It's really funny,
except I'm like the slightly weird looking doppelganger. It's like, oh, you're almost there, and you're like almost as tall.
You're actually like next to him, you look way more Arabic and you look like darker. But yeah, it'll be interesting because even now Cedric is not that dark. He's very fair skinned. He doesn't
have very many traditionally Black phenotypic or phenotype expression
at all.
So hair is curly but still pretty fine.
Yeah. And then
very fair.
He's very fair, and he's got like lighter eyes, and like, yeah, it's just gonna be interesting. That's pretty much how we deal with being an interracial couple, or some of like the tensions and things we have to face as woke people. So yeah, thank you, Jackie Locks, for the question.
Yay.
We were happy to answer it. If you enjoy this content, want to see more, like, share, subscribe to the channel.
Hit the bell.
That too. If you're interested in supporting this channel, now has a Patreon, patreon.com/Hallease. Head over there for extended content, probably an extended cut of this video actually. Oh, in the comments below, Let us know if there's other topics you would like us to cover.
Favorite recipe, favorite sock, favorite type of underwear.
I feel like if in the comments it's mostly going to be stuff pertaining to our relationship.
They can just ask questions.
I mean,
it'll be a short video.
But I feel like they'd want to know more about like our dynamic or whatever.